Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, friends. This is Ayya Sobhana, joining you for the first time on this particular channel. I have visited the Buddhist Insights on one previous occasion a few years ago and got to give a few talks. My home base, where we are speaking from now, is at the Dhammadharini monastery in the North Bay area, about 1 hour north of San Francisco. So it's late afternoon now. We're having the first beautiful soft rain that we've had in quite a few weeks. Enjoying that very much. And here at our monastery, we're just entering into Death Awareness Month. It's something that we do here for the month of November. So each day during this month, we're going to be doing chanting on behalf of the deceased, remembering with gratitude our relatives, loved ones, and all persons who have passed away before us in this endless stream of birth and rebirth. I think the format here would be about 30, 40 minutes of guided meditation, followed by some Dhamma talk, and then we'll have time for questions. Or actually, I think you give the questions by posting comments, and I will answer your questions as they come along. I'm going to give you a theme for today and the next, I think I've got 4 or 5 Wednesdays coming along that I'm available to speak during this particular time frame. And I thought of giving a series of teachings on the topic of dukkha. Okay, don't leave now. You may think that dukkha is an unpleasant theme to be thinking about, but as we know, dukkha is the first fold of the Noble Eightfold Path, the first fold of the Four Noble Truths. And it's one of the 3 characteristics of existence. The Buddha recommended that dukkha should be fully understood. As we try to practice meditation, it very often happens that one is not able to go into directly into samadhi or deep meditation. One can choose a meditation theme like reflection of loving kindness, meditation on the breath, mindfulness of the body, or some other theme of meditation, and have the determination or the decision to remain with that object. And yet, the mind can drift away. Sometimes even the mind is so restless and stirred up with different kinds of thoughts or feelings that it's difficult to even get a good, clear connection with the object of meditation. And then when that happens, it's necessary to simply be aware of what it's like when the mind is restless, or when the mind is not well settled on an object of meditation, or when the mind is moving. I think I shall offer a guided meditation pointing out awareness of the 5 khandhas. These are 5 different aspects of body and mind, which, when clung to, is the brief definition of dukkha. That is identification with the form of this body, identification with feeling, identification with volitional formations, identification with perception, identifying with volitional formations, or identifying with self-consciousness, sense, well, identification with sense consciousness. So I would invite you now to come into a posture for meditation, making the body upright and balanced, whether sitting on a chair or sitting on the floor in a cross-legged posture, making the body reasonably comfortable so that it's possible to keep the body still for 30 minutes. Feeling the material body, the weight and mass of the body pressing down on the chair or the seat or the feet, connecting with the earth element on the floor, this material body. And being aware of this upright posture and the way that it's balanced. Think of a string at the crown of the head, very gently lifting up so that the spine is open, not hunched over. And taking 1 or 2 long, deep breaths, breathing in long, breathing out long. Breathing in long. Breathing out long. Noticing the whole torso from the diaphragm and the chest, rising and falling with the breath. And then letting the breath flow on its own. This material body is the first khandha. This living body with its subtle energy. Just acknowledging, here is the head, here is the face, here is the neck, the shoulders, the arms, the hands, the front of the body, the upper legs, the knees, the lower legs, the feet, the solid or liquid aspect of the body. The bones are solid. The blood is liquid. The flesh is mostly solid. Saliva is liquid. And the body has a temperature, a certain warmth. And the body is always moving, even when sitting still, with the heartbeat, the breath, and the subtle vibration of the life energy. This living body is moving. Just acknowledge a body. Notice what it's like. Feelings can arise either mental or physical as to the source. Is it pleasant sitting here in meditation? Are the sensations in the body pleasant or unpleasant? Just noticing the color of the feeling. Noticing perception. This is one of the activities of the mind. Recognizing something. We're breathing all the time. And then with perception, one might recognize the in-breath, recognize out-breath. What's happening there? Can we notice what happens when a perception comes along? Going back over the body, acknowledging the head, recognizing, oh, there's the head. There's the face, and so on. What's happening when the perception arises of each part of the body, from the head down to the toes? And noticing the volitional formations like a decision. Say we intend to remain here in meditation, to be with the present moment, with the here and now, aware of what's arising with this body and mind. That's our intention. We intend this awareness, and we are aware. But if the mind goes to some other thought, we intended to go there. Wherever awareness goes is following our intention. So see how it is. Explore what happens with intention, directing awareness, keeping the posture, whatever we're doing on purpose. And then there is the consciousness or the knowing faculty. Whatever we experience with the body based on touching, or with sounds based on hearing, or any of the senses, or with the mind based on thinking. There's the faculty of knowing what's happening. What's really going on? There is this physical body with the weight of the body pressing on the seat or the cushion. There's a feeling connected to that. There's a perception of touching. There's the intention to direct awareness to be aware of that. And there is the knowing. This is the weight of the body pressing the seat or the cushion. Staying in open awareness, whatever arises in the here and now. Interested in any aspect of form, feeling, perception, volition, or the knowing faculty. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Buddham dhammang sanghang namasami. So, dear friends, I thought of talking today and maybe for the next few weeks while I have a chance to come back and speak with you about different aspects of dukkha. Dukkha translated as sometimes as stress or what is unsatisfactory, what is painful, what is out of order, ill-fitting, or not working properly, like the ka, or the opening where the axle of the wheel goes on the cart. So it's turning around and around as the cart is rolling. But if the ka is got a bad shape, if it's gotten distorted or warped, then the wheel is out of alignment. And you will find that your cart is constantly tending to pull off the road. And it takes a great deal of struggle and effort to keep your cart rolling in a straight line on the road. This is how it was for me personally decades ago when I first encountered this teaching of the Buddha, when I first got involved with the Dhamma. At that time, I had suffered a good deal with unruly emotions. And eventually, I, kind of like out of necessity, I invented for myself a way of getting out of the rut of being stuck with some kind of a stream of a negative or afflictive emotional state by analyzing that experience with emotions in terms of the 5 khandhas. I noticed that when emotion was present, that something would be happening with the body, whether it be the face is flushed or the face is pale, or the endorphins are flowing through the bloodstream, or adrenaline is flowing through the bloodstream. The shoulders are tense, the shoulders are relaxed, the hair is standing up on the hackles of the neck. The tears are happening. The face is smiling, or the face is frowning. All of these different manifestations are things that are happening in the physical body as a manifestation of an emotion. And I noticed that emotions are definitely connected to feeling, typically strongly pleasant or strongly unpleasant. And that, in fact, I started to see that the feeling is sort of like gasoline to a fire. If something happens or something is arising, something comes to our awareness, if the feeling is neutral or close to neutral, then it's not really necessary to do anything about it. One has freedom in choosing what action to do. Okay, so the action, that's your karma. That's the skillful or unskillful action that's building up what your future is going to be like. And then the strong feeling, something extremely unpleasant, would cause one of several reactions. One might become frozen like a frightened rabbit, or one might lash out, or one might kind of like go towards that unpleasant experience with a strong need to fix it or change it or adjust it, to revise what's happening, to make reality become something different so that it would no longer be painful. So all of these drives seem to be fueled by feeling. So I came very much to associate feeling as being like the gasoline on the fire of this process of life, wherein we are continuously doing stuff, and the more we do, we're sort of like buying into, putting down a payment for a certain kind of future. Then I noticed that depending on what kind of feeling was present, sometimes my perceptions would change depending on the feeling. So if I was feeling pleasant, then it was very easy to see the goodness in things. And if feeling unpleasant, very easy to see what is wrong or broken or deformed or in some way, bad or negative in whatever it was that I was paying attention to. So that then it became clear that the perception is not necessarily true, because the perceptions can change according to how the feeling changes. With the volitional formations, it was like there's a certain kind of a synergy going on with the changes in the body, the intensity of the feeling, and with the character of the perception that, say, if I would perceive something as being pleasant, then that would support a volition or an intention to stay with that pleasant thing. So it could be like a pleasant daydream. Okay, so a pleasant daydream is happening, and because it's pleasant, you're just willing to stay there for many minutes at a time. I can tell a joke on myself or a story on myself. On one occasion when I was very, very new to meditation, very new to Buddhism, I didn't know much at all, and I signed up for the New Year's week retreat at the Bhavana Society in West Virginia, which at that time was a completely silent retreat with no Dhamma talks given, except on New Year's Eve there was a Dhamma talk. But for the whole week, the participants were just doing sitting meditation and walking meditation on a schedule and holding the complete silence without any interaction. So then, on one occasion, I fell into a daydream that was so pleasant that I was able to remain in a sitting posture without needing to get up and change my posture for an entire 4 hours at a stretch, engaged in a single daydream. Of course, you know that that's not meditation. That's not proper meditation. That's being lost in a daydream. But it was because of the pleasure that I wanted to continue with that. And I can tell another story on myself on a different occasion. At the this was also at the Bhavana Society where I used to be. There was I was a retreat manager for a retreat, and at the particular retreat, the attendance was comprised of 17 women and 6 men. And they were, the seating was done in a circle, but it's just the way the room was. It was sort of like landing, so that because there were more women than men, that the seating was going around. So some of the women had their places on what was considered like the male half of the room. But then when the people came in for that session, the 6 men would thought they could take any seat on their side of the room, and the gist of it was that some of the women could not have a seat, and they had to be sitting like behind. Well, so I got my hackles up. My hackles stood up, and I started having a big perception like of injustice, because some of the women didn't have a seat. And I kind of like stewed about it. So this whole synergy happened. And I blamed the monk who was, well, in any case, I blamed one of the monks about it, and I had a lot of thoughts like that so-and-so is a male chauvinist or something like that. And after thinking and pondering, I in a subsequent session, I put signs on the chairs so that the women would have chairs to sit in. And so I formed an intention to do something, to correct something based on a perception, and the perception was arising from a feeling, and it was all very like emotionally driven. So this is how emotion accelerates. There can be a feedback loop. Once you have a perception, the perception itself is giving you some more feelings, and that's how it builds up. Then at the time, that I was kind of like using this set of concepts to eventually learn how to tame my unruly emotions. I thought of the consciousness or the knowing faculty as being very much involved with a self-creation, and having like a consciousness, like there's an object and here's a self, and the self knows the object. So it's a kind of a duality like that, which I could experience as being rigid and brittle, or experience as being sort of soft and flexible. the value that I got from this whole line of thinking was when caught up with some afflictive emotional reaction, to be able to break it down into the 5 khandhas, and then to see, like, if I'm not able to pull out of the emotional response when it's one thing, but when it's broken down to 5 things, then I can do an adjustment. So I can change the posture of the body, or take a warm shower, or go for a walk, or do something to diffuse the tension in the body. Or I can just be aware of how quickly the feeling tone is continuously changing, so that eventually pleasant and unpleasant feelings, it's like you can hardly take them seriously, because they're just always changing. So, it's like, so it's unpleasant. Well, it doesn't really matter whether something is pleasant or unpleasant. And in particular, with respect to perceptions, making this inquiry, like, is it true or is it not true? And even if something is 60% true and 40% not true, one can sort of like direct awareness to the aspect of what we're perceiving that's different, and get out of it that way. So then this is sort of like the, we could say, dukkha kand, that the 5 khandhas, upadana khandha dukkha, upadana khandha dukkha, the 5 khandhas affected by clinging are dukkha. It's very often sometimes translated as identification with the 5 khandhas is dukkha. Which is, that's good. It's a little bit intellectual to me. And I think the way that we experience the 5 khandhas in real life is actually much more somatic than that. It's much more of like a whole person kind of experience, not a conceptual experience. Sometimes upadana khandha is translated as clinging to the 5 khandhas, so clinging to the body, or attachment to the body, attachment to feelings, and so forth. And that's also true. In a certain way, I found it, the synthesis, or the integral aspect of the 5 khandhas altogether as a whole, when we make that a self, in other words, we believe it, when we take the bait, then that's when we're in trouble. And when we see the 5 khandha as being just a flow of diverse phenomena, could be like a school of fish or something like that swimming in the river, and at a particular moment it like appears to have a shape. That school of fish, it looks like a horse, or or it looks like a sailboat, or it looks like a cat or something at a particular moment, depending on how you're looking at it and everything that's happening just now. But that's just an appearance, and it's constantly changing. And so then when having a different viewpoint and developing that viewpoint so that whatever is happening in this particular example that I'm giving with being afflicted because of our unruly emotional reactions, then it's just an appearance. So we don't need to swallow it. We don't need to swallow it whole anymore. Later on, I have learned that developing very clear and settled insight into the three marks of existence, the tilakkhana, all conditioned things are impermanent, all conditioned things are unsatisfactory, all things are without self, or everything we can experience, or all dhammas are without a self. What happens is when a person is practicing vipassana, and after the emotional reaction has arisen, then you can mindfully be aware of it in all of its elements and aspects. But by that time, the barn door is open and the horse has already gotten out. And so then it's quite a lot of work to sort of like bring it back and to get settled down again. But if one develops this strong, clear, and settled insight into the tilakkhana, the three marks, then the phenomenon, the initial phenomenon, the initial impulse, or the initial change in our environment, or change in the internal environment that happened, like the very first arising of an unpleasant feeling or a pleasant feeling, or the very first arising of some object that we can see, hear, taste, or smell or touch, then the things that used to trigger us don't trigger us anymore. It will be, or even if we do get triggered, there's no ammo. So like an unpleasant feeling just comes, it just comes and goes. It would be like the click of, if you pull the trigger on a gun and it's empty, it's just a little click. And that's it, it's finished, it's complete. It doesn't need to explode or proliferate. Actually, in the several suttas, like in the Satchavibhanga Sutta, the discourse on the exposition on the truth, or the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the turning the wheel of Dhamma, we can see the extended definition of dukkha. This starts, birth is dukkha, aging is dukkha, and so forth. And it's within that series about the quality of dukkha that one can see the phrase upadana kanda dukkha, that the aggregates of clinging are dukkha. The Buddha said, in short, in brief, sankitena panchupadana kanda dukkha. In brief, the 5 aggregates of clinging are dukkha. There are several other phrases in that sutta that are really worth investigating, exploring, and learning for yourself. Like not getting what we want is dukkha. There's a whole depth we could go into on that. And there's more to develop in terms of this idea how the thorough or complete understanding of dukkha fits into the Four Noble Truths, how when we really understand what it is and how it works, that and what the consequences are, that then it's a very natural thing to let go of craving. And when we let go of craving, even if you let go of just one item of all the craving that you have in your life, to that extent, you can experience freedom from that particular bond of that particular aspect or element or parcel of craving that you've let go of. And in that moment, one can experience the release or the cessation from that much of your suffering. So if you've got 999 units of dukkha, you let go of one item of craving, and then you're down to 998 elements of dukkha, perhaps in that moment. These are all things that I can go into later on, but just for now, it seems like I've had enough time to explain to you about this idea that if it hurts, if one is feeling and experiencing what is unsatisfactory, unpleasant, difficult, what you wish to get away from, which you long for the liberation from, that dukkha, then it may be useful or beneficial to break it down in terms of how it's manifesting for you in your life, in terms of these 5 khandhas: the form, the feeling, the perceptions. The formations could be all kinds of mental fabrication, or it could be in particular volition or intention. I find it most useful in this context to think of it as intentions or like decisions, and then the consciousness, the knowing faculty, or the sense knowing through the senses, and how attached we are to having senses that work and operate correctly, by which we're able to know what's happening. And so with that, I'm going to open for questions, and I see one question that's come in already. The dukkha of endless sickness of body and mind. Well, I will say that I want to break this in 2 parts. mental illness and physical or bodily illness. The normal person, the normal average person who's not awake or not enlightened, who hasn't heard the word of the Buddha, or hasn't had an opportunity to develop wisdom, I would say that person is mentally ill. And the person who is awake, who's attained liberation, who's had the destruction of the taints, the complete end of craving, who's done what had to be done, for whom there's not going to be another birth, then that fully enlightened arahant is the one who's mentally well. So then we can know that there is hope through this practice of developing the right view about the Four Noble Truths and following this gradual training, that mental sickness can be cured. This is the whole path of training. This is why the Buddha was called a great physician. It's very possible, if one really practices, to notice that the way that we suffer maybe used to be more like gross or overwhelming in the past, and later becomes more subtle, more like our standards change after somebody has practiced for a long time, that even minor depression or having a flare-up of anger or something like that. Maybe in the old days, we used to think a little bit of anger was enjoyable. But now, when that arises, there's a kind of like a repulsion towards those type of responses, and that becomes dukkha. So every time that there's psychological pain, in general, I would recommend to try to investigate and find out, what am I clinging to? And if I can see what I'm clinging to, am I able to let it go? Now, it could be that we can't see it, in which case we've got to keep looking. And it could be that having seen it, we're not yet able to let go because we have not yet discovered or found out how to let go. And then this becomes the work, sort of like a focal point as we study the Dhamma and learn different aspects and different practices, that we're looking out for. What is the practice that I am able to internalize and make my own, which enables this letting go? Bodily sickness is kind of a different case because it sometimes is mind-made, caused by something that we can change in our present mental attitude, but in other times, bodily sickness is part of our karmic inheritance when we were born as a human being, and we got born with a certain kind of body, and then we went through our life with all the different experiences and things that we were exposed to with this body, and we may have acquired different kinds of injuries or been exposed to different kind of toxins during this life, as well as just the aging of the lifespan. And so then there's sickness of the body. I recommend not to torture the body or to cause the body to be sick, not to intentionally cause any kind of injury, self-injury to the body, and not to intentionally choose a lifestyle that's causing harm to the body. And yet, nevertheless, when illness takes over, when it becomes chronic, or when it becomes terminal, then the best response is, as far as I know, is just to consider, because of the causes and conditions previously, this is the body that I have right now. And to detach from that identification with the body. Like, it's not my body. It's just because of causes and conditions that it's the body that I'm riding on right now. And with the feeling, the painful feelings associated with illness, to do the practices that help to become equanimous towards different kinds of Vedana, so that whether the Vedana is pleasant or unpleasant, one can be as equanimous as possible. I recommend going along with whatever kind of medical care that you believe in, and that's suitable to reduce or manage the pain and discomfort associated with illness, and to promote healing and health of the body. So that's mine. Here's another question from Kumu. Dear Venerable, love the practical advice. Removing craving, even for one khandha in one moment, itself is a liberation, even in a small way. Right. Yeah. Ajahn Buddhadasa, I think, is the most well-known, respected teacher I know of, who has this idea of that nibbana is something that is experienced in the moment, and that there could be such a thing as a momentary glimpse of nibbana at that moment at which the craving is gone. In the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, which gives a more extended, elaborated description of the Four Noble Truths, and there's also in the Datta Vibhanga, in the Satya Vibhanga Sutta, the description of the arising of dukkha. It starts out, the I is dear and delightful in this world. Whenever we cling to the I, that's where dukkha arises. And then it goes through from the I to perception to all of the different aspects of mentality that is arising subsequent to contact with the I. Each one is dear and delightful in this world. When there's clinging, that's where dukkha arises. And then when it speaks about the nirodha, the truth of nirodha, or the cessation of clinging, the explication is, the I is dear and delightful in this world. When the craving does not arise in connection to the I, that's where suffering ceases. And so every place, exactly the moment, exactly the aspect of experience where we are caught in dukkha, it's exactly in that place that we come out of dukkha. So the nirodha, or the cessation of suffering, is not something that's happening in heaven or happening at some kind of peak experience of meditation, or that's happening in some far away and future kind of a place. It's something that's just in exactly the same moment, exactly the same phenomenon where dukkha is arising. My root teacher was Bhante Henepola Gunaratana, who's at the Bhavana Society in West Virginia. Some of you may know him. And the vice abbot at the time was Bhante Yoga Vachara Rahula, an American bhikkhu. When I was coming up and studying, then staying with Bhavana a lot, I noticed that Bhante Gunaratana, whenever he spoke about the Dhamma, there was about a 50% chance that the reflection on impermanence would be a significant aspect of what he had to present. So I got the idea that the perception of impermanence, the insight into impermanence, was one of the major aspects for Bhanteji in his personal journey in the Dhamma. And my friend Bhante Rahula very often would speak about non-self. He wrote a little book, which is a collection of quotations from the suttas about non-self. And when he speaks, there's a very good probability that whatever topic of Dhamma he's speaking out, there's some aspect of non-self that would be brought into it. And so I had the conclusion that non-self was an important aspect of the tilakas, that non-self was like in his personal journey, his spiritual journey, that non-self was the gateway that he was able to come to first, that was the most effective and most powerful for him. And then as their student, it seemed to me that dukkha was my gateway when I was younger in the practice, that I was like capable of developing insight into dukkha, and it was extremely fruitful for me. So in this kind of a way, the three marks of existence are like three facets of a gem, and any one of those facets, whichever one you're able to see well and clearly and able to reflect on and practice with, that it will lead you to the center where all three of them will become completely clear to you. So if phenomena is impermanent, how can you cling to it? Because it's always changing, right? If it's dukkha, you won't want to cling to it because it's dukkha. And if it's non-self, you won't be able to cling to it because there's nothing, there's not a self there to cling on to. Any questions or any comments about this practice, and in particular doing meditation and trying to just develop the ability to discern and notice a volition, or just to be able to discern and notice a feeling when it arises. These are not the standard meditation topics that we see most commonly practiced. Very often, contemplation of the Brahma Viharas, of the bodily contemplation, or anapanasati, protective meditations. These are the ones that people practice with. But in order to investigate, it is worthwhile. It's kind of like doing push-ups, just to spend some of your meditation time or take a retreat, and just to say, well, can I notice a Vedana when it arises? Can I notice a feeling? Uh, some people can't even notice a feeling. They don't know what it feels like at any particular moment. Some people are not able to notice their body. If you say, direct your awareness to the top of the head, it's sort of like a meaningless concept because they're not like connected with being aware of the body. So each one of these of things, it's very interesting and can be fruitful. But then that kind of meditation, investigating meditation, is too busy. And then afterwards, you need to have something more calm and more settled. And so you need to also be able to just watch the breath, just have a very simple object, and just see if it's possible for the mind to land on the breath, and simply stay with that in as simple a way as possible. There's a question, best way to practice with non-self as a lay practitioner. Right. So I have a good friend who's a lay practitioner. Her name is Diane, and she's quite a good practitioner. And she gave me a mantra or a slogan, which is, "It's not personal." So, like, if the boss is yelling at you at work, it's not personal. If I feel distressed in reading the news, it's not personal. If I have a child or a spouse or loved ones in my family, and I feel the whole range of everything connected with our attachment to them, well, first contemplating impermanence and just knowing that this child, this spouse, this relative, this dear person who we love and care for so much, who's so much a part of our life, knowing that I'm changing and changing and changing all the time. They're also changing and changing all the time. Even if we're close now, we may not be close in the future. Even if we're both alive now, we will definitely not both be alive in the future. And doing a sort of like a preliminary, like preparing the mind, just thinking of it, everything that's mine, dear and delightful will change and pass away and become separated from me. And just do that thought to sort of like, even as like you're with your dear beloved person and you're really attached to them, then practice letting go. Practice mentally letting them go. Practice like care about them with your hand open so they can go at any time. The self is not just an internal creation. The self is created by our relationships. And so you could notice that when you're at home with your family, yourself is one thing. And when you're at work, yourself is a different thing. Or if you go to a different country, yourself is a different thing altogether. If you're around people who love you, self is one thing. If you're around people who hate you, self is something else. And so practicing or investigating about these relationships and the impermanence of these relationships will help to deconstruct and weaken our being so like gullible in believing that this is myself. death contemplation, picturing the future death and decay and decomposing of your own body can weaken that attachment to self. Being generous can weaken your attachment to self. So what's the opposite of a generous person? A selfish person. So a selfish person is very concerned about what is mine. And what is mine will be that what I control. So if it's my house, my car, and my family, that's because I feel like I have got some right to control those things. Or if I acknowledge that I'm not really in control of the car, the house, or the family, that they can burn down at any time or be stolen at any time, then at least I think that this body, it's like my body, I've got control, I'm responsible for taking care of this body. But then, we realize that we don't really control this body. And if you don't really control the body, well, who thinks they control their mind? You could all put your hands up. How many people think you're actually in control of your mind? Well, most people, average people, are not that much in control. And so these kind of reflections, whatever phenomenon you're looking at, if you say, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself, or if you say, it's not personal. When I'm here at my monastery, the monastery where I live, every place I look, I see chores that have to be taken care of, or something that needs to be tidied up, or something that needs to be fixed and repaired. But if I visit the Empty Cloud Monastery in New Jersey, it's not my monastery, and I'm so much more relaxed about, if I see something that could be tidied or fixed up or something like that. It doesn't disturb me in the same way because I'm not identifying with the Empty Cloud Monastery the way I'm identifying with the Dhammadharini monastery. So just seeing how that identification of mine is the cause of dukkha, cause of suffering and stress, and practicing with imagining if it's not yours, you can just relax with it. Eventually, I think the self, when they speak about anatta, that's an internal psychological thing. And eventually, every phenomenon that you can experience, you can see it as being not me, not mine. This is not myself. I think we've come up toward the end of our time. Thank you, everybody, for your patient listening. And I'd like to close by briefly reciting the closing homage to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supartipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Thank you, everybody, for your practice and for your patient listening. I will be back in the same spot in 1 week.